from casting the wrong Batman and making movies like The Suicide Squad, to, well, let's just say everything revolving around Henry Cavill, here are some DCEU decisions that made fans furious. Let's start with the elephant in the room, or should I say the bat in the room? You already know it's about Ben Affleck, don't you? I'm gonna be honest here, Ben Affleck pushed as the true Batman always makes me mad. Especially with these Snyder fanboys trying to cancel Pattinson's Batman? Whether you're a big Batman fan or not, you can simply tell Ben's portrayal isn't quite it. Why? In what world does Batman kill people willy-nilly? Yeah, the previous Batmans have also done it, but comic books weren't really popular and no one really bothered with any inaccuracies. Okay, maybe fan favorite Bale's portrayal also did, but that was because there wasn't any other option with Ra's al Ghul. But the killing thing isn't the only reason, because Ben's Batman is modeled after an earlier version of the superhero. This Batman has lost his Robins and his faith, which has led him to act in ways he normally wouldn't. Again, the killing. This is not the Batman that most people are accustomed to, despite the fact that others may find it endearing. But come on, Mr. Vengeance is the finest investigator out there, whereas Affleck's version is revealed to be very dependent on technology in the DCEU. He almost does everything using electronics, including battling, tracking down Superman, and recruiting Justice League members. It's a small thing, but it gives the character a weaker look, which frankly didn't sit well with anyone. And let's cut him some slack, as it's challenging to meet expectations after the Dark Knight trilogy. Now, another reason why there's a mob outside DC's office is the marketing aspect getting the best of Ben, making him blame DC's Jesus for destruction of the metropolis brought on by Zod. Plus, the Warner Brothers required this setup so they could call the following episode Batman vs. Superman, with Affleck playing the scapegoat. And it was always kinda clunky that practically revealed the movie's conclusion before we had ever seen the opening scene. The whole operation reeked of a movie-making machine where the marketing folks controlled everything, much like Snyder's picture itself, which takes me to 2016, when Affleck was forced into an apologetic performance. See, it was actually Snyder who chose to solely examine the evil aspect of being Batman. But Batman from the comics, even though he had turned kinda evil, never lost his touch like he did in the movies. Because, generally speaking, Affleck struggles to convey the character's emotions as accurately to this day. In nearly every scene in Dawn of Justice, he just had a poker face. And it isn't entirely Ben's fault, because the writing could have been better. Plus, you know, Snyder failed to understand Batman and rather had him portray an impulsive vigilante who is barely prepared and shows emotions. Like, come on, the Martha switch is simply flipped, and somehow Batman is immediately back on the right track, and now he's suddenly the good guy? The script's shallowness suggested that Batman is no longer able to make choices based on rational grounds, but that's not the Batman we know. Speaking of knowing characters though, what was DC thinking when they cast Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor? Because it was a big no-no, as people more than just dislike the character. It was a subpar performance at best, because the Lex Luthor I know growing up was cool, collected, and in charge of what he was doing. And when he occasionally lost control, it was still a controlled rage. It used to be as if DC had its own version of an evil James Bond, a man who embodied the pinnacle of what humanity was capable of. And none of these things apply to Jesse Eisenberg. His acting was utterly incorrect, even if you overlook the fact that he's skinny, which Luthor was in the Silver Age. I think he understood it wrong and decided to play an evil Zuckerberg, and although that wasn't really a bad idea, it wasn't a good one either. It just didn't give the Luthor vibe, as he never really posed a threat to Superman. His motives are just plain stupid, even more so than in the Silver Age, which by the way was written for children. I don't know how Superman didn't simply sock him. I know I would have. All in all, you know it's a bad decision when the main antagonist comes off as a joke. But what about when the protagonist does too? You've got to be aware of the Wonder Woman controversy, right? The one where everyone had no body hair? The movie was the biggest female-led and female-directed film of all time, and the actress won everyone's hearts. However, a month before the film's debut, a trailer for Wonder Woman caused controversy since it showed the lead actress, Gal Gadot, tossing a tank. She possessed incredible physical strength, but that wasn't the problem. Rather, fans drew attention to the fact that her armpits had no visible underarm hair. It was a blink and you'll miss it, but fans started expressing one complaint after another on Twitter. Some argued that Wonder Woman should have underarm hair because, as a matriarchal member of the Themyscira, she would not have been subject to Western culture's pressures to conform to a certain idea of beauty. They said that she would have had underarm hair and not given it much thought since she was an Amazon. Warner Bros. Did not really pay much attention to the complaints, but in later trailers, Gadot's underarms were no longer wider than the rest of her body and had the same skin tone as the rest of her arms and torso. But hey, the film did amazing things, so maybe that was smart? Anyway, bad decisions on bad decisions. Don't even get me started on the first Suicide Squad. A bad Joker, a bad story that basically gives the plot armor to everyone, Cara Delevingne, and weird romances and even weirder acting. And you top it off with a PG-13 rating and boom! It gives you the worst movie DC has ever produced. With a 26% Rotten Tomato score, it's impossible to avoid getting the idea that the creators didn't really want us to see what was happening, given that most of the movie's action occurred at night. But that's nothing. Do you know what DC actually doesn't want us to see? Superman. Wait, no, let me correct myself. Henry Cavill's Superman. They really hated the one nice thing they had going on, no? Like, come on. The Rock came in, made you a somewhat good movie. I brought Henry Cavill back for you so you could save DC. But no, you just had to ruin it. And sure, I could make peace with him not being the Man of Steel, but I couldn't with how they CGI'd his mustache off. It was back when Cavill had an amazing mustache for his part in Mission Impossible Fallout, and Justice League was doing reshoots. At the time, it was said that Paramount would not permit Cavill to remove his facial hair, so Warner Bros. Had to come up with something at the very least. A unique solution, they called it. The only thing they could do was erase Cavill's facial hair with a pretty crappy CGI technique in post-production. Even Snyder explained that he had only seen Cavill's mustache in memes, saying it was hilarious. But a part of him was happy that the studio was able to have that not be the total legacy of the hard work that he had done in the last 10 years. But at the same time, it was heartbreaking to consider that, whatever that thing was, it was the last impression most people would have had of Superman. I'm sure you didn't know that DC producers were forced to pay about $20 million to delete the mustache digitally. And well, that's $20 million down the drain. Plus, the actor disclosed that a minute-long clip required roughly 6 weeks of work and a 5-minute clip required 25 weeks just to remove some hair. Although Cavill and his co-stars found it amusing, the dispute gave the VFX team a lot of trouble. I guess it was really a Mission Impossible. Get it? Having said that, that was all for DCEU decisions that made fans furious.